Hello and welcome everyone to Real Talk Office Hours, Hunting for Silver Linings for Monday, August 24, 2020. Hosted today by myself, Corey Hart. We usually have George Katsanos here in West Michigan, the Great Lakes region of the United States. And also today we have our special guest, we have Alex from Startup Grind Louisville. We are brought to you overall by Startup Grind, the world's largest startup community. And we operate with 600 plus chapters in over 125 countries. And we have a mission to educate, inspire, and connect. This pandemic has been and will continue to be the great global leveler. And as entrepreneurs, we need to do our very best for our businesses, teams, and families. And we do this by being informed, rational, analytical, and rigorous in our thinking. We also need to learn to control our biases as they emerge in various circumstances. And we invite everyone to join us live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday as we track the intersection of facts, biases, and action through our review of global financial markets, alongside the check-ins and real talk with Startup Grind chapter directors, entrepreneurs, and ecosystem stakeholders from around the world. Now today, George is not able to join us for the financial market update, but you can catch us on Wednesday when he is able to get us caught up. And we do this because no one has a crystal ball, but if we keep our eyes and ears open and pay attention, we may be able to see around the bend and with some luck spot the silver linings that are around every cloud. And if you miss the live events, you can of course see them at startupgrind.com/grand-rapids. And we have just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Comments made and views expressed by all participants in this podcast are not intended to invite or incite individuals, entrepreneurs, or investors to buy or sell financial assets, real assets, commodities, futures, and/or options. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform, not to trade or invest. If you feel compelled to trade and/or invest, please call your broker. And remember, however, risk is everywhere, even when you think that you're not taking a risk. Now, with that, George also likes to say, if you're thinking about investing, also in addition to your broker, go see a psychotherapist. But so that being said, really grateful to have Adam Robinson here with us. Adam, thanks so much for joining.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Corey. I'm very excited to be here this morning. This is an honor.
Yeah, so we've been doing this for a couple months now, and we've checked in with over 50 different chapter directors from around the planet. And one of the best things that's coming out of this is that this is a great opportunity for the directors to highlight their own ecosystem, and then also help us maybe break down some of those stereotypes, because just because people might think they know what Louisville's all about, chances are you've got a better idea. So with that, I'd love to hear about your background professionally, personally. Like when did you get bitten by the entrepreneurial bug? Was it a family thing? And then how you found Startup Grind?
Yeah. Well, so that's a great question. So what really motivated me to go be an entrepreneur? So what I can tell you is that when I was in high school, I was such a nerd. I loved going to the bookstore with my dad. That was a thing we did on a weekly basis, almost every weekend. And I always was there hanging out in the personal growth or the business book section. I was always drawn to that for whatever reason. Also, my first job, I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. My first job was working in the first drive-through only Chick-fil-A. That was in Lawrence Road in Greenville, South Carolina. Started working there when I was 14. I think it was 14. It was either 14 or 15. But as soon as I was old enough, I was given a white shirt. So I was moved into kind of a managerial role at a very young age, and I was responsible for closing and stuff like that. So that just always piqued my interest in doing that. And as soon as I had an opportunity to open my first business, which was a martial arts school here in Louisville, Kentucky, I jumped at that opportunity and I've never looked back. I'm going on 24 years as an entrepreneur. I've done many, many things during that season. I've made a little money. I've gone bankrupt. I've built, sold, acquired, just about everything you can imagine that a small business owner or entrepreneur can go through. I've done those things and I'm very thankful for all of them. And it gives me a platform and an opportunity to share those varied experiences with many people in our community and those I work with. So I love entrepreneurship. It's one of those things that once you're bitten by the bug or you're wired or whatever, it's what you do. And so I love the journey. It's wild sometimes. I think it drives my wife and my family crazy, but I love every moment of it.
That's awesome. So, with that background and experience, how did you find out about Startup Grind?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in December of, let's see, was it 18? Yeah, December of 18, I exited a project where I was helping one of my clients with a long-term business development assignment. And I was kind of looking for what's next. So I wanted to do something that was really going to impact small business owners here in Louisville, Kentucky. So I started something called Villepreneurs. Louisville is often referred to as the Ville. Of course, we've got the Louisville Cardinals, the University of Louisville here, and the Ville's just a nickname often bestowed upon our city. So I thought, what's something unique we could do to call out entrepreneurs in Louisville? So I came up with Villepreneurs. And that is meant to be an opportunity for Louisville area small business owners to come together, connect, provide opportunities for them to grow, training and stuff like that. So that grew pretty quickly within the first 60 days or so of 2019. And during that time, my work was discovered by Natalia Bishop, who is the founder of Story Louisville, a very innovative and unique co-working space here in Louisville. And so I met with Natalia, never met her before, heard a lot of amazing things about her, but did some consulting with them because they wanted to build a similar kind of ecosystem and community specifically for startups. Now, what's interesting about this is that I've always been a mom and pop, Main Street small business guy. I've never really been a startup guy, right? It's always been more just local businesses. And so Natalia and her focus at Story Louisville really was more for startups and things like that. So when I started working with them, I was thrown into the startup world and I really fell in love with it. And one of the things that's so interesting about this, Corey, is prior to my work at Story Louisville, I would have told you that an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. Now I know that that is not the case. There's a big difference in mindset between somebody that's working or has a goal in high tech, high growth startups versus your just average Main Street mom and pop entrepreneur. I didn't know that. Now I'm acutely aware of how different it is. But anyway, I'm very grateful for Natalia for giving me the opportunity to help them at Story Louisville grow their co-working space in the community that they wanted to build. Well, it was in the summer of 2019, Natalia came to me and she's like, you know what? The opportunity to be the director of Startup Grind in Louisville is open and I think you should apply for it. And I'm like, really? Because I knew a little bit about Startup Grind, but not a whole lot. So I went through the application process to do that. I was so excited when I heard back from Madeline and got the thumbs up. I mean, I was just ecstatic because what an opportunity to be part of a global movement and be able to bring that here in Louisville. So we actually hosted our first fireside chat in November of 2019, and we've not looked back. We've done something every single month going forward. It's been amazing to be able to connect with folks like you, Corey, and others in the ecosystem and even globally. I was talking to G, I don't know, a couple months ago, and the person after me was from a small country in Africa that I'd never even heard of. And I was connected and we got to talk for like 20 minutes. And I'm like, I would never, ever get the opportunity to talk to somebody like this without being here in Startup Grind. So I'm a huge fan. I love what Startup Grind is all about. I love the innovation that's happening. And quite frankly, even with what's happened with COVID, as you said before in the intro, kind of how COVID is flattening things out, right? And I think we're seeing that, and Startup Grind is just making so many things possible. So very thankful to be a part of this community.
Yeah, it's real interesting how Startup Grind is like now's the best time for Startup Grind. And while we see and George and I speak about this all the time about how there are a lot of supply chains that are shrinking and they're moving within borders. Walls are going up, whether out of necessity, out of just sheer availability of durable goods or whatever. but talent, ideas, collaboration, and capital are broadening. Those are becoming more globalized. So it's
Sure.
really fun to see that happening in real time, especially as we've been doing these check-ins for like since early March, and seeing how that is really picking up pace.
Hmm.
And when we speak with the directors, more often than not, maybe 90% of the time, they say, hey, we are looking for more international collaboration. Like, we already have regional like nailed down because we're used to being able to, like, I don't take the train, take the bus, drive like hour to our, fellow chapter directors that are in our region,
Hmm.
neighboring country, etc. For you, like, you're a border town yourself, so like, you kind of probably understand what regional partnerships are like. But now
Hmm.
the opportunity for global partnerships is
Yes.
even more exciting. Um, and yeah, and so that's kind of what that takes us right into, maybe learning a bit more about your personal ecosystem there in Louisville. So, or
Sure.
should I just call it the Ville? Do I just call it the Ville?
Louisville, the Bill's fine.
Okay, all right. So, now I understand that healthcare is a big sector there,
Yes.
but what other, like, what are your main sectors, and maybe something that, if there is an emerging opportunity, maybe you can touch on that as well.
Yeah, so healthcare is the big one. In fact, here in Louisville, within the last 18 months or so, maybe 2 years, the Louisville Healthcare CEO Council has been formed, and they're doing a lot. I mean, you got so many insurance companies here, so many big medical companies here. So that's what Louisville is mainly known for as far as the innovation that's happening there. So that really is what's driving a lot of the innovation in Louisville. It's really focused on that in many areas, but we are seeing a lot of other tech kind of things coming out of this. So Edge Analytics, Edge Sports, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they're an amazing startup in terms of, and they're almost past startup phase now, but just the data crunching and the number crunching they're doing with their Edge Sports division is amazing. They're literally going in, working with NFL teams, high school teams, even college teams, that does all this number crunching real time in their football games as far as what's going on, and giving the coaches real decisions on what to do next based on all these probabilities. And so it's really cool to see something like that coming out of Louisville. And then we've got something that's happening like weather check. So folks have rental properties or buildings and want to know what's going on there. That's an amazing opportunity for them to be able to do that. We got a new startup that's really getting a lot of attention, Unitonomy, that's putting some really, really cool apps out there to help organizations work with their culture and their people. So they published some things. Ready App has really taken the world by storm based on COVID. COVID really helped them. So there really is a lot of tech-enabled stuff that's coming out of Louisville right now. And I think the opportunity is pretty significant. Now, another thing that's happening right here in Louisville, we've got the University of Louisville, and there is a lot of really good IP within that university. And they are actively looking and seeking for entrepreneurs that are willing to take those ideas and work to take them to market. So that's really cool. And there's just so much stuff that I think is going to be coming out of Louisville that we're going to be hearing more and more about in the near future. There is more interest in Louisville. One of the big drivers of that, Louisville has been named a Microsoft Future of Work hub. And it's really cool seeing a company like that willing to pour resources into Louisville. There's a lot of talent here. And because the cost of living is so low relative to other cities, it's a big attraction point for people to come here. Now, of course, COVID's changed that a little bit because you can work from anywhere. But Louisville really does have a lot to offer in that regard. So while healthcare is the primary thing that's happening right now, I think that we are seeing a lot of movement towards tech-enabled SaaS products that are really going to be able to take, you know, the nation and different markets by storm. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But there's some really cool things happening right now.
Cool. That's very, thanks for the comprehensive background on the different sectors and some really great people doing some cool things. Now, you did mention the university there.
Hmm.
Um, uh, and it sounds like the university is they have their thumb on the pulse. It sounds like they may be doing the
Yes.
right thing. So graduates coming out of that university or the university programs like with involved with tech transfer, et cetera. Am I to assume by listening to you that there isn't a very big mismatch between graduating and then the skills that are actually required to be an entrepreneur or start something? Like they,
Yeah.
the
So
people are prepared when they graduate?
yes. So the people in Louisville that are in the College of Business and even their IMBA program are doing a fantastic job of preparing the folks going through school to do that. So I think that when they come out, yes, they are ready in the workforce. Now, one of the challenges that Louisville has had is because there's not a lot of big tech companies here in Louisville, is keeping high quality developers and tech talent in Louisville, right?
Hmm.
So they get the degrees in the really good programs and then they go elsewhere
Right.
where they see more opportunity.
Hmm.
Now that's starting to change. And again, I think
Hmm.
COVID's leveled that playing field a little bit just because you can still work from this city, which has an amazing food culture, by the way. I mean, if you love to eat, this is a great place to live because the amount of food in this city is just amazing. But so I think that that's a good thing that's happening because there has been initiatives to make sure that we're keeping the really high quality, especially developer talent in Louisville to serve the opportunities that's there. And Microsoft is working really hard to make sure that happens as well.
Okay. Um, yeah. So, and then you touched on like the co-working spaces and whatever that it's
Mhm.
available, and I see that there's quite a robust network of opportunity that way. So if I if I'm an entrepreneur, I graduate, I have an idea. Where are my best avenues and resources to like kickstarting my idea? Is it uh, getting involved with the accelerator incubator? Is it going into a co-working space? Are there opportunities? Is it easy to find networks like Startup Grind, or do I have to like fumble around a little while before I find my like-minded compatriots?
Yeah, great question. So Louisville has done a really good job of solving this problem. So one of the things that we've done is we've got an organization here in Louisville. It's funded by part of the what is it? The Rise grants. It's now called Amplify Louisville, and their entire mission is to work on cultivating and helping startups that are going to be tech enabled, high growth, high scale. Larry Horn is the executive director of that and he's done a fantastic job. So they actually work alongside what we're trying to do with Startup Grind to really get the resources and opportunities available here in Louisville. Now, we've also got something, there's a website, it's called startuplouisville.com, or it's
Mhm.
just hashtag startuplou really is where everything, all things startups, where we point people to and list events, resources, the co-working spaces, the angel groups, where the VC money is, all those things in our city and region. There is a singular place where people can go to find that information. So it makes it very easy from that standpoint. So typically people don't have to look too far to go find that. Now, in terms of accelerators, there's plenty of opportunities here in Louisville for that. We've got the Vote Awards. We've got programs that the University of Louisville puts on. My organization has partnered with Co-Starters to offer their programs. In fact, right across the river in Southern Indiana, we've got some great programming as well. So there's really no issues that if a person has a really good idea, they will have no problem finding it. Also, a project that I'm working on, it's called LouisvilleStartupMentors.com. Everybody on this website has been willing to offer a free hour of consultation, and there's some really experienced people on there. So there's a lot of people working together to make it very easy for people that have ideas or want to get started to make sure that they have somebody to talk to or conduits by which they can get introduced to the people who can help them.
Um, Now, being that that border the border town, and having all of these really great resources, is there like a certain amount of competition between the, like you said, across the river, et cetera? Like, is there?
I don't think so. When you look at Louisville, I mean, we got Indy, we got Cincy, we got Lexington. Lexington's got the University of Kentucky. I think that there is a lot of collaboration that's happening simply because if our region wins, we all win. And I think that one of the things that has challenged Louisville in the past is that there's been a lot of territorial protection, right? A lot of little fiefdoms. And that is no longer happening. There's more collaboration within our city. And I think also that people in other cities and other regions see the opportunity that if we can share ideas, if we can work together, we can accomplish so much more together. And I think that that's a big message from Startup Grind. And I think it's starting to be more pervasive and people are starting to figure this out. I think even as a result of what's happening in COVID, and my hope is that that is going to be a positive outcome from COVID, is that people start to learn how to work together and see the value in differing ideas and differing approaches and just different ways of doing things. So I'm very hopeful that's going to happen. But yeah, there is a lot of work happening within the region amongst different cities and different groups.
Now there's are there particular like state run resources like economic development like corporation? Are there
Yes.
different zones? So if I'm clearly from Michigan, right? So I want to come down. Maybe I've tapped my region, or our grant programs are run out, but I still I want to do something. And is Louisville like a place that I would like be eager to go? And then the state would be like, hey, great, awesome, great to have you here. Like, here's 50 grand.
So yes, so there are actually, if I remember correctly, there's 5 different economic development clusters around the state that have all received grant funding from the RISE grant and stuff like that. So I mentioned Amplify Louisville. Well, there's other counterparts throughout the state from that perspective. The state is doing a really good job right now to focus on entrepreneurship and what's happening there. So a lot is still continued to be invested in that. Manufacturing is really big in our state. A lot of people know it primarily for horses and the horse racing. In fact, Kentucky Derby's here in a couple of weeks. That's going to be really, really weird, by the way. The Indy 500, I just happened to turn it on and it was weird watching that race with no fans in the stands. Well, I can't imagine what that's going to be like seeing the Derby with no fans in the stands. But I just bring that up to say that, yes, the state government is continuing to do everything that they can to increase entrepreneurship and continue to invest in those sectors and also manufacturing in our state.
So I come down there, I'm in Louisville, I've got my startup, I got some traction. It's a proven business idea. I'm enjoying working at the co-working spot and all the food that's there. Now I need some money. Now I don't have my friends and family network down in Louisville. Where do I go? Is it pretty clearly laid out? Are there active investors? Is it a really active angel community, or like where are the opportunities or gaps in the investment side?
Sure, great question. So one of the first places I recommend people go to is Venture Connectors. So Venture Connectors is a great place where venture clubs come together, people looking to invest. There's a monthly meeting. In fact, they've got a new competition that's here in a few weeks called Venture Sharks. They're taking applications for people to come and pitch to that. So it's not hard to find the investors that are willing to come in and make investments into organizations. In fact, even down in Lexington, you got the Bluegrass Angels, which is a very active investing group down there. So finding the resources isn't difficult. One of the things that's also happening is we're starting to get more outside money looking into Louisville. And so that helps as well. So listen, I believe any startup, if they've got a really good idea and it's scalable, finding money isn't a problem. And there's plenty of money here in Louisville that can help fund things forward. So the resource I mentioned earlier, Startup Lou, is a great place that we send people to that are looking to make connections within certain VC organizations or folks that just are looking to make investments. And there's a pretty significant angel network, across the Bluegrass as well. So there's really no issues with people finding funding if they've got a great idea and it's scalable.
And so then is like the region is what's the mindset? Is it a fairly conservative mindset? Are people taking chances? Are investors excited about like putting their money in a bunch of different deals, or are they're kind of like, oh, I really like to have my diversified portfolio, some real estate over here, some safe investment there, or is it just like the Wild West where it's like everyone's got their pistols out and it's a lot of fun?
Okay, well, it's definitely not the Wild West.
Okay.
Definitely not that. So, from my experience, and I'm probably not the most qualified person to answer this, but from my experience, I think it's probably more conservative in that people are very careful in where they're putting their money. It's certainly not anything out west or anything like that. And I think COVID has really kind of put a damper on that as well. Our city is also going through some challenging times right now because this is where Breonna Taylor and all that has happened. So downtown Louisville has, experienced some challenges from that regard. So I think even in that light, I only bring that up to say that I think that has even put more of a pause on some things like currently, but I do believe that that's going to, as things smooth out and we get some resolution, and as things begin to turn back to normal, that the investments and things are going to continue. But as I said before, when there's a really good opportunity, people aren't going to back off and investing to that. In fact, here in Louisville, a gentleman named Alan Groscheider started his own kind of consultancy, even crowdfunding equity platform. He works with a lot of organizations on how to do that. Alan learned a lot about this process through starting up his own company, through some equity crowdsourcing. And so it's pretty interesting that while you can go the traditional route here in Louisville of getting, the angel investors and whatever, there's also folks that have experience in doing the equity crowdfunding that can help and consult with that as well. And there's a couple of groups that are trying to work with organizations, or I'm sorry, to work with investors to come in and say, hey, listen, we understand you want to put $10,000 in the market in this fund or whatever, but what if we do a lot of the legwork for you? We go and research the startups, yada, 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 and let's plop this money down in this particular startup or whatever, to where it's not the individual investor that's doing all the due diligence. They're relying on other people to do that for them. And that's starting to happen more and more. And I hope that happens because Louisville has an insane number of accredited investors. When I saw the numbers, I'm like, is it really that high? But I'm told, yeah, it is that high. So there is opportunity as well to get more money coming in from folks that, rather than putting it in the market or mutual funds or whatever, that they are going to be putting that into local startups and local small businesses, just because they can actually go and see those companies. They can, sit down in their coffee shops or, whatever they've got. So it's really going to be interesting to see how that happens, because there's a good bit of wealth in this city. And I hope that it's going to continue to be reinvested back into the city. Because one of my missions, as I shared, I'm not originally from Louisville. I've now been in Louisville for almost 20 years. And a lot of the work, or 25 years, excuse me, a lot of the work that I do, I believe if we can create a thriving entrepreneur climate in this city, in any city for that matter, you create a thriving, wonderful place to live and work. And we need that. And that only happens if there's enough resources, funding to make these projects go and get off the ground.
So with such wealth and probably some knowledge to how to get there, right? How to be and interest in investing, especially with as many accredited investors as you say there are. What does that mean for like the valuations there locally, especially now in COVID, follow-on funding or early stage funding? Are companies having some challenges with the valuations? Are investors like, how are they little in being a little more careful and conservative? Is that a consideration compared to fundraising from outside the region and the money coming in?
Corey, I wish I was able to answer that question accurately for you, but I cannot give you a good answer on that perspective, and I apologize, but I don't know enough to give you an answer to that.
Sure. And it's just as this pandemic works its way through, or we work our way through it, or however that works. That topic is affecting different regions of the planet differently, right?
Okay.
And so it's just something that we like to track if possible.
Sure.
Now, it sounds like you guys are just like really bustling there. So you did touch on some of the um, uh, like topics of the day that are happening and that are happening in your city. The Breonna Taylor's situation, that you are a border town. When we spoke a few months ago, you mentioned that because the rules here in the U.S. how they work is it's state by state, right? And when we spoke, you said, yeah, there are people like rushing across the bridges to get to the other state because that's where things are open and having fun.
Yep.
How are things now?
So, well, as of today, the big battle that's happening is kids sports. And I know that sounds funny, but so across the river in southern Indiana, basically, it is booming. Their economy is booming just because it's more open. You got more stuff that's happening. Kids sports is happening. It amazes me how many people leave this city to go play sports in Indiana and in Tennessee. It's just crazy. So it's very interesting to see how this is going to work. It is having a pretty significant impact. In fact, within the last 2 or 3 days, a new Facebook group was started called Let Them Play Kentucky. And it went from 0 to like 30,000 members because the state's governing high school association board said, hey, we're going to vote, let them play. And now we're waiting today to see if the governor is actually going to let that happen or not. And I've got 2 boys that play high school football, or one that plays high school football and one middle. So we're waiting to see. So it really does make a difference. And when you look at how different states are responding to different things, it's amazing. Now, I would not want to be governor. I would not want to be put in that position, because you take something like Louisville, where we have about a 10% positivity rate, whereas you go into other places out in the country, and when I say country, like other counties within Kentucky, and it's nowhere near that. But the overall state's positivity rate is now dropped below 5%. So that's a good thing, but we've got this hotspot in Louisville. So it really does make it challenging from that perspective. And it's just, we just got to be vigilant. We got to do what we're asked to do. We got to work through this. We got to be wise. But at that same token, the policymakers need to make it as possible or safely as possible for people to still continue to conduct business and do what they need to do. So I will tell you, small businesses in Louisville have been just devastated, especially these smaller mom and pops. That's been who has been hit the worst. Startups, depending on the stage that they're in, they may or may not have been as impacted as much, depending on where they are in securing funding and stuff like that. But certainly small businesses have been hit really, really hard.
Cool. So a couple last topics to get to. We like to check in on the issues of equity and diversity, specifically. Certain cities in the U.S., states in the U.S., regions in the U.S. have programs around this, whether it's entrepreneurial programs, educational programs, grants, funding, opportunity zones, all that fun stuff. And globally, it's really it's like a gender equity is a big part of the conversation, right? Because what diversity means in the U.S. and then of course in Louisville is different than what it means in Grand Rapids. It's different than what it means. So maybe if you're comfortable sharing a little bit about where we are in Louisville with that.
Sure. So tomorrow there is going to be a huge protest, the end of BriannaCon, and BriannaCon has been a big 4-day event where people are coming in and just protesting what's been going on with Brianna, and BriannaCon has done very, very well. So this is a very sensitive topic here in Louisville. If you look at the city of Louisville, you've got something called 9th Street, and basically, let me get this right. Yeah, so east of 9th Street is where a lot of business happen and all that, and west of 9th Street is where a lot of gentrification and things happen. And so race is a tough topic here in the city of Louisville, and that's why there's been so much activity happening in downtown and things like that. So thankfully, this has given rise to a lot more conversations about things that needed to be done. And there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of different programming that's come to light based on that. And I'm very glad to see that happen. And I think that racism is an issue. I think that it does happen. I think also issues with gender inequity happens as well. And the only way we're going to get through these things is by having the right conversation. So both of those issues are prevalent here in Louisville. I think right now, obviously, the primary focus is on the racial tensions and the racial issues. And I believe that we can work to overcome this. I mean, that is my hope. You know, all of us look through the world via our own paradigm. All of us do. And the more people we know, the more diversity we can bring into our lives to help open up that paradigm is going to be huge. And I'll give you an example. I've developed a friendship with a gentleman named Shane Howard. And Shane and I have many different views that are different on various things. But Shane and I have had a lot of conversation. And Shane is doing so much amazing work when it comes to racial issues. And Shane has taught me and educated me on some stuff that I didn't know. And I think sometimes, quite frankly, Corey, that in certain circles, a lot of the issues that's happening, it's happening out of ignorance. People just don't know, especially wealthy, affluent white people. I don't think it's intentional sometimes, but they literally just don't know because some of the racism and things that's happening, even if it's unintentional, they don't see it. It's not helping or it's not happening in their world. So they're unaware of it. But when they have conversations with somebody that it really happens to or hear stories, it's like, oh my goodness. So I actually, a new project is launching today that I'm a co-founder of that's meant to help address this issue. And it's something that we hope that gets to the root of it. I didn't want to be a bystander, just sitting by watching all this happen. I wanted to do something about it. And there's a diverse group of founders that have come through to make this happen. And hopefully it's going to be able to make a difference. But yes, a lot is being done in the city to make an impact, to get funds into minority businesses that are just getting started to make sure they have the resources that they need. So, and my hope is that change is going to happen in this regard because it needs to happen and it's got to happen. And it's the only path forward for our country if we're going to come together and heal.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Thank you very much. Then the last thing that we always ask our directors when we have them on is we ask, what can the global startup grind community do for you? You personally, Adam, or your ecosystem, or both?
So I got to tell you, I'm so fired up just about where Startup Grind globally, I can't talk there, is going. I love their new membership platform that gives so many startups in our community access to that. I love what Startup Grind is doing with a lot of their new programming that's coming out, their playbooks and things like that to help chapter directors come out and make more more of our programming better for them. But I love what's happening as well with like the local pitch battle that we're doing this Friday is a direct funnel for startups here locally to be able to have some visibility on a global scale. And I think that that's huge. So I told Madeline and G and some other people within the Startup Grind leadership this just a few weeks ago, that the direction that they're going is fantastic because what's happening is that rather than feeling like Startup Grind is just small and localized and we just do our local events, Well, now the opportunity the members in our chapter have to be seen and be visible on a global scale is unlike anything they've ever done. So I think that they're going in the right direction. They're listening to their chapter directors, they're listening to people in the community, and they're making the right innovation. So I don't have anything to add to that because I'm so happy about the direction that they're going. And I can't wait to see what the coming months have to offer, because I think that we're in store for some amazing treats. In fact, when we had the opportunity to give the golden tickets to some local startups, we were able to do that, and they are accepted into it. And the reviews I'm getting so far is they're just absolutely loving it. So Startup Grind's doing a lot to take care of people globally, and that all comes down to taking care of people locally.
That's awesome. So your pitch battle, do you have a personal favorite in your in your final
Well,
batch?
yeah, so I want to be careful of that. So I'm not a judge, but it's a very diverse group of folks that are in there that are that got some different ideas. Some of them are products, some of them are SaaS apps. So I love doing CrossFit, working out, all that. I don't do exactly CrossFit, but it's a variant of that. So one of the apps goes through and is able to measure the different angles of your body when you're doing certain lifts. So if I'm doing a squat, I can set up the camera, it'll watch me do the squat, and then it goes through and says, okay, you're in exact alignment or not alignment or whatever. And that's very helpful to people who are doing like squats or deadlifts or whatever. So that one personally is probably the most intriguing to me because it's very personal to me. But we'll see how that goes. We actually do have a celebrity judge, I guess, but Johnny Price from WeFunder is actually going to be one of our judges on Friday. So we're very excited to have Johnny coming in and see what he thinks about that. So, but
I like
it'll
Johnny
be
a
fun
lot.
to see yeah, he's a really cool guy, super knowledgeable. So here in Louisville, we've got Access Ventures, which has a new product called Render Capital. And when they had their big launch party, we actually had Johnny and Gaddy from WeFunder actually come in and talk at an event. So yeah, they're really smart guys and just good dudes too, just really good people.
Yeah, when I was in the Bay Area fundraising for a couple different startups, Johnny was a crucial and critical connection, and just open, gregarious, friendly, and that was before I even found Startup Grind. So it was really fun being in the Bay Area, seeing an ecosystem that was just filled with people that are just like pulling everyone up, right? It's like, if you got a good idea, like you said earlier, if you have a good idea, things get a lot easier for you.
For sure.
So anyway, well, thanks so much for your time today. You've been very generous with us. So good to see you again. And I look forward to one day when we get to do this in person. I'll come down and I'll eat some of that food.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. Well, Corey, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It was a real honor to do that. So thank you for this and also the great work you're doing. Keep it up.
Thanks so much, Adam. Cheers. I'll let you have the rest of your day. All right.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.